judge who you appointed has just ruled that you must give CNN reporter Jim Acosta his press pass back. Your reaction to the ruling?
It's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal. What they said, though, is that we have to create rules and regulations for conduct, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing that. We're going to write them up right now. It's not a big deal. And if he misbehaves, we'll throw him out, or we'll stop the news conference. Nobody believes in the First Amendment more than I do. And if I think somebody's acting out of sorts, I will leave. I'll say, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you coming, and I'll leave. And those reporters will not be too friendly to whoever it is that's acting up. Make our position. I think you were treated very unfairly, both of you. I think you were treated very unfairly because you have somebody interrupting you. And if they don't listen to the rules and regulations, we'll end up back in court and we'll win. But more importantly, we'll just leave. And then you won't be very happy. Because we do get good ratings.
Mr. President, when you talk about rules and regulations, what do you mean?
Decorum. You can't take 3 questions and 4 questions and just stand up and not sit down. Decorum. You have to practice decorum. You were there, you understood, and you understand. We want total freedom of the press. That's very important to me. It's more important to me than anybody would believe. But you have to act with respect. You're in the White House, and when I see the way some of my people get treated at press conferences, it's terrible. So we're setting up a certain standard, which is what the court is requesting. And always freedom of the press, always First Amendment, but that's the way it is. And we always have the option of just leaving. You know, if we feel that things aren't being treated properly, that people aren't being treated properly, we always have the right to leave. And I think the other media, the other press in the room will not be very happy if that happens. But I've instructed my people, when they're not treated properly, you have the right to just leave anytime you want. Okay?
Well, that was President Trump during an interview that will air in full on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. CNN reporter Jim Acosta has regained access to the White House, but the administration is expected to address reporter conduct with new regulations. Joining us now is White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, who I used all of my powers of persuasion to get her into the studio tonight. So one of the statements that came out of the White House today was a statement from you that indicated that there were rules being developed and a protocol being developed. When will we expect to see what that looks like?
I think the biggest thing to take away is, and the place that we focused on, is exactly what the president said. We support a free press, but freedom of the press doesn't mean freedom to be disruptive, freedom to be rude, freedom to interrupt and impede the ability of the colleagues of that disruptive reporter from actually being able to do their jobs, as well as White House staff from being able to do theirs. We've laid out in a letter to CNN and their team what we think were some of the missteps that their reporter made at the press conference on November 7th in a letter that we sent them tonight, and we expect to see a response from that. Look, the judge, I think, was actually very clear that the White House has the ability to say you can't come in. You don't have freedom of the press doesn't mean freedom to the White House. And he said there has to be due process. And so that's what we're doing. And we'll see what happens from there.
I mean, the judge's ruling was not a First Amendment ruling. It was a Fifth Amendment ruling.
Exactly.
He never said that CNN had been denied their First Amendment rights, because obviously they can say whatever they want. The government, including the White House, has never said, here's what you can't say.
And they also have 50-plus additional people that are hard pass holders at CNN. They actually are one of the individual outlets that has the most hard passes of any news outlet in the country is CNN. They're one of the top 3. And so the idea that they aren't able to get information that they need from the White House is frankly laughable.
Well, let me ask you some process questions. How many seats are in that press room?
I believe there's 49 seats.
So 49 total seats. There are thousands of journalists across America. Who gets to decide whose rear ends occupy 49 seats, and how come they get them and thousands thousands of others never, ever get to darken the door of that place?
So we work with the White House Correspondents Association, but they are the primary people that help determine who those seats belong to.
Do they actually get to pick them? Or can you say, okay, on this next Thursday, we're going to have journalists from anywhere in the country except Washington?
Well, tradition has been in the past that the White House Correspondents Association determines who sits in that room and who sits in those individual seats.
But that's tradition. It's not law.
True.
And so if there was a desire to give other journalists an opportunity to do it, because, I mean, I think some people see these same folks in there every day and they say, how come they get to do it? And I'm sure there are broadcasters and print reporters all over America who would love to be able to come and ask the president questions and probably wouldn't keep talking if he asked them to stop.
I think that's certainly an option to explore, and maybe we will in this White House. I know the president is one of the most accessible presidents probably ever, but certainly in modern history. He's taken, in the last 6 weeks leading up to the midterms, he took 300 times the number of questions from reporters than either of his predecessors. That's outrageous to pretend that this is a president who doesn't support the press, doesn't support freedom of the press, and hasn't given unprecedented access to those reporters. He's somebody who loves to engage with the press. Because,
we've noticed that. We have.
but, and that's because he loves to be able to speak directly to the American people. We never want to prohibit that from taking place, but at the same time, those individuals can't be disruptive. They can't impede the ability of any individual to do their jobs.
So when might we see the rules or the requirements, the protocol? You've said you sent the letter to CNN tonight. Is that going to be in a few days, a few weeks?
You know, we'll work with our team on that, and certainly moving into Thanksgiving holiday, we'll see how long that process takes. But I think there are some just standard practices. Look, I think the very basic minimum is that if certain reporters like Jim Acosta can't be adults, then CNN needs to send somebody in there who can be.
So if he asked 3 questions when he was only supposed to give 1, does that not make those other reporters a little ticked off that he got more of the candy out of the bowl than they're going to get?
I'm not going to speak for any of the other reporters. I'll leave that to them. But certainly, privately, a number of them have expressed their displeasure with the fact of his grandstanding and the position that he often puts a lot of them in. And it's certainly not something that they want to celebrate nor defend.
I don't want to belabor it. Let's move to tomorrow. You're going to California with the president. You'll be looking at some horrific scenes. Worst fires in the history of the country. 63 known dead, 600 unaccounted for. What will the president hope to say to the people of California in that visit tomorrow?
I think the simplest message is that we're here. We're there for you. We will do any and everything we can to provide federal assistance and federal resources. He conveyed that, I know, in a call to Governor Brown earlier this week. He'll be joining us when we get to California tomorrow. I think this will actually probably be one of the harder days that we've had in the 2 years of this administration, not only visiting with the horrific and seeing the scenes of the horrific wildfires that have ravaged California, but also talking with some of the people and the families that were impacted by the shooting there not too long ago. It's going to be, I think, a very difficult day, a very emotional day, and I think the biggest message and the biggest takeaway will be the president saying, we're here, and thankfully the president's got big shoulders, and I think he's going to go there to offer them up to people that need somebody to lean on.
The president had a big moment this week on prison sentencing reform, and we've only got about a minute and a half left. But I want to cover this because I didn't see a lot in the mainstream media. They were so busy
because it was a good story. So usually those don't get a lot of play.
Well, it's a great story, and this was bipartisan. You had people that really ranged the full spectrum from the far left to the far right and everyone in between. On a personal level, I was involved in this, one of the committees that helped draft some of the policy based on my own experiences. This was huge. This was major. Give me a synopsis of what this legislation does that the president pushed this week.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is it brings the country together. It's something that, like you said, it's a bipartisan. It's an area where Republicans, Democrats, everyone can come together and agree that this is a good thing to show a little grace and a little mercy in our justice system, something that hasn't been done in a long time. We've had decades worth of bad decisions that have been improperly placed people in really, I think, longer sentences than they deserved, not allowed people to have a life after prison. And this is something that is very important to the president, very important to Jared Kushner, who's done a tremendous job in helping develop and really work this. This isn't something that happened overnight. It's been a 1.5 year long process. And I think you saw a little bit of the culmination of that, and we're really excited to see it move forward.
He should get the credit for that, and I hope he will. 30 seconds, and that's all we've got. But look, earlier Tammy Bruce on this show said, well, Sarah Sanders is going to be leaving the White House. And
it was an announcement. I didn't know about either.
Is there something you need to tell your dad?
I hope not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
so.
well, because I was thinking, and I told her, I said, well, gee, maybe you know something I don't know. I'm just the dad. How would I know these things?
I think it is one of the greatest privileges and certainly one of the greatest opportunities of my life to serve in this administration, to work with President Trump and the successes that he's had in the first 2 years. I think he's going to have a lot more over the next 6.
Will there be other people, though, that will transition out? I mean, is there going to be a huge amount of people that'll probably...
Every administration has turnover, particularly after the midterms. Most people don't have the stamina the president does. I often say I don't know how he's not tired, because the rest of us certainly are. And that's not new for any administration, that you'll have some people that will change over. But at the same time, the president's got an incredibly dedicated team that wants to continue to see the country move forward, and we want to see it under President Trump.
If you are going to do it, would you let me know, and don't let me read it in the paper?
Sure,
because I might think it's fake news. Sarah, thank you for coming in.
You bet.
Not that you had a choice, but thank you for being here.